It was the summer of 1982 when Jenna and her friends decided to camp out in the Whispering Woods, a dense forest notorious for its eerie silence and dark past. The town's folklore spoke of the woods being cursed, but the thrill-seeking teenagers brushed off the warnings, eager for an adventure. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, the group set up their tents near a small clearing. The air grew cooler, and a sense of unease began to settle in. Jenna couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. After a dinner of roasted marshmallows and campfire tales, the friends settled into their tents. The forest seemed to close in around them, the sounds of nocturnal creatures amplified in the stillness. Jenna lay awake, listening to the rustling leaves and distant hoots of owls. Suddenly, she heard a faint whispering. Straining her ears, she realized it was coming from the woods just beyond their campsite. It sounded like someone calling her name, but the voice was distorted, almost otherworldly. Jenna's heart raced as she nudged her friend, Mark. Mark listened intently, his face paling as the whispering grew louder. They woke the others, and the group huddled together, straining to hear the voice. It was unmistakable now, a haunting chant that seemed to come from all directions at once. Terrified, they decided to leave the campsite and head back to town. As they packed up in haste, the whispering intensified, now accompanied by the sound of footsteps crunching through the underbrush. The forest seemed alive with malevolent energy. As they made their way through the darkened woods, the path they had taken earlier seemed to twist and turn in unfamiliar ways. Panic set in as they realized they were lost. The whispering voices grew louder, almost mocking their fear. Jenna felt a cold hand brush against her arm, sending shivers down her spine. She turned, but there was no one there. Her friends were equally terrified, clutching each other as they stumbled through the trees. The air was thick with an oppressive sense of dread. They eventually stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin. Desperate for shelter, they rushed inside, slamming the door behind them. The interior was musty and filled with decaying furniture. The whispering had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. As they tried to catch their breath, they noticed strange symbols carved into the wooden walls. Jenna recognized them from an old book of folklore. They were protective runes meant to ward off evil spirits. But the runes appeared damaged, their power weakened. The group huddled together in the center of the room, their flashlight beams casting eerie shadows. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. It was an old woman, her eyes milky white, and her hair a tangled mess of gray. She spoke in a raspy voice, warning them of the curse that plagued the woods. She claimed to be the last of a line of guardians tasked with keeping the spirits at bay. The runes had been broken by vandals, allowing the spirits to roam free. The woman told them they needed to leave the forest before dawn, or be trapped forever. She handed Jenna a small, worn amulet and instructed her to follow a hidden path that would lead them to safety. The group thanked her and hurried out of the cabin. Guided by the amulet's faint glow, they found the hidden path and made their way through the forest. The whispering voices followed them, growing louder with each step. Just as the first light of dawn broke through the trees, they emerged from the woods. Exhausted but relieved, they vowed never to return to the Whispering Woods. Jenna kept the amulet as a reminder of their terrifying ordeal. To this day, the locals avoid the forest, and the legend of the whispering spirits continues to haunt the town. In the summer of 1995, Sarah and her family rented a lake house for a much-needed vacation. The house was charming, with a rustic appeal and a beautiful view of the lake. But from the moment they arrived, Sarah felt an unsettling presence, like they were not alone. The first night was restless. Sarah heard strange noises, creaking floorboards, soft whispers, and the distant sound of footsteps. She dismissed them as the house settling, but a nagging feeling in her gut told her otherwise. The next day, while exploring the attic, Sarah found an old journal hidden in a dusty chest. The entries were dated from the 1940s and spoke of a tragic story. The previous owner, a young woman named Emily, had drowned in the lake under mysterious circumstances. Sarah's curiosity grew as she delved deeper into the journal. Emily's last entries were filled with fear and paranoia. She wrote about seeing a dark figure watching her from the woods and hearing voices calling her name at night. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Sarah shared Emily's story. Her parents dismissed it as a tragic accident, but her younger brother Jake was intrigued. They decided to investigate further, starting with the lake where Emily had drowned. As they approached the lake, the air grew colder and an eerie fog settled over the water. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she noticed a figure standing on the opposite shore. It looked like a woman in a white dress, her hair flowing in the breeze. Jake waded into the water, calling out to the figure, but it vanished without a trace. The fog thickened and they hurried back to the house, unnerved by the encounter. That night, the disturbances grew worse. Sarah was jolted awake by a loud bang. She rushed to Jake's room and found him staring at the window, his face pale with fear. He claimed to have seen Emily's ghost, her eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. The room grew icy cold, and they could see their breath in the air. The next day, they found scratches on the walls and mirrors fogged with the words, "Help me," scrawled across them. Sarah decided to visit the local library to learn more about Emily's death. The librarian, an elderly woman, revealed a dark secret. Emily had been engaged to a wealthy man who owned the lake house, but on the eve of their wedding, she discovered his dark past. He was involved in a series of mysterious disappearances. Emily confronted him, and in a fit of rage, he drowned her in the lake. The man covered up the murder, making it look like an accident. But Emily's spirit never found peace, and she haunted the lake house, seeking justice. Sarah knew they had to find a way to help Emily's spirit move on. They returned to the lake that night, bringing Emily's journal and a makeshift shrine. Sarah recited a prayer, asking for Emily's forgiveness and promising to expose the truth. The air grew still, and the water's surface shimmered with an ethereal glow. Emily's ghost appeared before them, her expression softening as she reached out to touch the journal. A sense of peace washed over the lake, and Emily's spirit slowly faded away, leaving behind a calm and serene atmosphere. The next morning, the disturbances had ceased, and the house felt warm and inviting. Sarah's family packed up and left the lake house, grateful for the experience but eager to leave the haunting behind. Back home, Sarah published Emily's story, bringing the truth to light. The lake house was eventually sold, and the new owners reported no signs of haunting. Sarah never forgot the summer of 1995 and the ghostly encounter that changed her life forever. During the summer of 2003, a group of friends decided to explore an abandoned carnival on the outskirts of their small town. The carnival had been closed for years after a series of tragic accidents, but the allure of the dilapidated rides and eerie atmosphere was too tempting to resist. The entrance was overgrown with weeds, and the once bright signs were faded and covered in graffiti. As they ventured deeper into the carnival, the air grew heavy with a sense of foreboding. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of rusted metal. They made their way to the old Ferris wheel, its skeletal frame looming against the darkening sky. Sarah, the bravest of the group, suggested they climb to the top for a better view. Reluctantly, they agreed, and one by one, they ascended the rickety structure. From the top, they could see the entire carnival grounds, a desolate wasteland of broken rides and decaying attractions. As they gazed out, Sarah noticed a flicker of light coming from the funhouse. Curiosity piqued, they decided to investigate. The funhouse was a maze of cracked mirrors and warped floors. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. As they navigated the twisted corridors, they heard faint laughter echoing through the halls. It sounded like children, but the tone was sinister. They stumbled upon a room filled with old carnival costumes and props. A tattered clown suit hung from a hook, its empty eyes seeming to follow them. Suddenly, the door slammed shut and the lights flickered out. Panic set in as they fumbled for their flashlights. The room grew colder, and they could see their breath forming in the air. Sarah's flashlight beam caught a glimpse of movement in the corner. A figure in the clown suit stood there, its face twisted into a grotesque grin. It lunged at them, and they screamed, scrambling for the door. They burst out of the funhouse, their hearts pounding. As they ran, they noticed more figures emerging from the shadows. Clowns, acrobats, and other carnival performers, their faces frozen in macabre smiles. The carnival had come to life, and it was hungry for revenge. Desperate to escape, they headed for the exit, but the path seemed to shift and change, leading them deeper into the carnival. The rides began to move on their own, lights flashing and music blaring. It was as if the carnival was mocking them, drawing them into its twisted game. They found themselves at the old carousel, its once beautiful horses now cracked and peeling. The ride spun slowly, its haunting tune filling the air. Sarah spotted a figure sitting on one of the horses, a little girl, her eyes hollow and empty. The girl whispered to them, her voice a chilling echo. She told them the carnival was cursed, the spirits of those who died there trapped forever. The accidents that closed the carnival were no accidents. They were sacrifices to appease a malevolent entity that thrived on fear. The entity had grown stronger over the years, feeding on the sorrow and terror of its victims. The girl begged them to find a way to break the curse, to free the trapped souls. She handed Sarah a small ornate key and pointed to the old fortune teller's tent. Inside the tent, they found a dusty crystal ball and a locked chest. Using the key, Sarah opened the chest, revealing a collection of ancient artifacts and a tattered book. The book contained a ritual to banish the entity and free the spirits. As they performed the ritual, the carnival grew darker, the rides slowing to a halt. The air crackled with energy, and the ground shook beneath their feet. A deafening roar echoed through the carnival as the entity fought to maintain its grip. With a final blinding flash of light, the carnival fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the ghostly figures vanished. The friends stumbled out of the tent, exhausted but victorious. They left the carnival grounds, never to return, but the memory of that night stayed with them, a reminder of the darkness that lurks in forgotten places.